Welcome to Masaryk University's Language Centre ICT interview series. In this series, we're going to interview, of course, CJV teachers and professors and external language professors about anything to do with technology and language teaching. So at the moment, our focus, of course, is going to be teaching online. But in the future, we will talk about blended learning where you're teaching with technology or without technology in the class and using technology online and having that blended approach between online and in class. This is extremely important for the announcement that we've just had recently. We will be teaching online for autumn 2020. So I thought I would start with one of the most important interviews, which has the topic, how to design an online course. So in this interview, I'm going to speak with Henri Annala from TAMK, which is Tampere's in Finland, Tampere's Applied Science University. And he is a digimentor, which we will discuss that in the interview, for other language teachers to consult him about how to teach online. And so he's developed an entire course on how to design an online course. It's an extremely important interview at the moment, and it's an extremely interesting interview, and we get some really good tips and hints from here on general templates, and then also perhaps 3 focus areas that we should really focus in on for designing our coming semester, and perhaps designing in some of those elements for our coming semester to make our online courses superb. So I was wondering if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Henri, as Belinda just said, and I work at Tampere University of Applied Sciences in Finland. And my work consists basically of these 3 areas. One of them is, of course, teaching languages, and specifically I'm teaching English. Also used to teach a bit of Swedish, but I haven't really done that in several years now. So English teaching, and then the other area of my work includes international affairs. So I work a lot with international staff and students and organizing different events and so on. And then the third area would be about digital pedagogy and also digi-mentoring, which is something that we do at TAMK. So focusing on helping other teachers with their problems related to pedagogy and digital environments and all that. So that's basically what I do. And I've been teaching online for several years. Some of my courses I also teach face-to-face, and I really enjoy doing both. And also, of course, blended. So a bit of a mixture, but yeah. So I think that's about it.
So you mentioned digi-mentoring. What does that entail?
Yeah, I've heard that this digi-mentoring concept is sometimes
Kind of a
it
bit
might
new.
sound really weird, for some people, but it's something that we actually, I think several universities of applied sciences do that in Finland. I think probably people in different countries, they also do something like that, but it might have different terms that they used to call it. But basically, digi-mentors are, first of all, they're teachers themselves. So I'm a teacher as well, and all the digi-mentors that we have, they are also teachers. So they understand what teaching is about, what kind of needs teachers have in terms of planning their lessons and so on. And they are also interested in digital pedagogy. So that's basically the requirement for you to be a digi-mentor. And we have digi-mentors in all of our schools at the moment. So the idea is that the person who is a digi-mentor for his or her own school or unit or faculty or whatever. So everybody knows that, hey, this is the person that I can go to if I have some questions. And it's not the same thing as help desk, for example. If you have a technical problem, like my printer doesn't work, then of course you you contact the help desk, and then an IT guy comes in and helps you out.
Mm.
But if you have a question like, okay, I'm planning on having this kind of activity with my class online, and I've done this in a classroom, but I don't know what would be the best way to do this in an online environment. So the chances are that the IT people don't necessarily know how to help you because they are not teachers, you know. So,
Mm.
so that's where digimentoring comes at play, really. So we try to sort of like work in between the IT people and the teachers, and being a little bit of both. And what we also have, we have this digimentor network, because we are like, I think there are like 30 maybe of us in our university community in Tampere. So we have these meetings, and of course we get a lot of requests from different people. We get a lot of messages that, hey, can you help me with this? And of course we don't know everything, but we can then
Mm.
utilize the network and ask the other digimentors, is there somebody who has experience of this? Have you done something like this before? And then we can of course help each other out. And it has proven to be really useful, especially now in COVID times.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Wow. So how busy were you during the COVID times and the lockdown?
Well, obviously the number of requests that we received has like skyrocketed. So
Mm.
we were really busy last spring. We have continued to be busy this autumn, and a lot of stuff to be done. But obviously for me, because I also work with international affairs, that kind of like
Mm.
nobody goes anywhere, so it's much more quiet in that respect. Of course, we've also started to think about, okay, how to keep up this international dimension in our work, in these times. So, virtual mobility, virtual exchanges, these kind of issues that we've been working with. But yeah, digimentoring has been really like an area where you can easily burn all your working hours
Yeah,
these days.
that's true. Yeah, so that leads to a really good question. Like, what do you do? Do you have any strategies to sort of keep yourself sane, so to speak, or manage that workload, especially if there's a big increase like that?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. Of course, not. I don't have any like big strategies. I just basically try to get work done as effectively as possible, so that it gets done, so that it doesn't just pile up. And then of course, like, you know delegating work as well. So if you get a lot of stuff, then somebody who could help you out, maybe then just like ask, okay, are you like super busy, could you lend me a hand with this?
Mm.
um, and then also like prioritizing things. I mean, I'm really good with my calendar, so I keep it really up to date and reserve time for everything. So that helps a lot.
Mm.
You just have to do it. So
Yeah.
no, nothing special really, but like trying to manage everything the best possible way. Of course, our supervisors are people who are heads of departments. They are really like usually supportive in that way, that they always ask that, are you doing all right? Do you have like too much work? If you do, please tell us, and we'll try to fix that. So
Oh,
you
that's
know
good.
they're really good in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. It actually brings me a little bit back to my IT days, just managing priorities, managing the calendar, managing some sort of a to-do list, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
all of that scheduling. Nice. So today, you were thinking of talking about how to design a course that is specifically designed for 100% online, in the online world.
Yes.
How do
So
we begin that?
how much did we have time?
True.
Yeah. Well, um, that's of course a large question, and one that we could easily discuss like for several
For
hours. But I
hours
think
at a
that
time.
I think you were talking about like 1 hour, right? For now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for our discussion. Yeah, just so that I kind of like know what kind of things I would be able to take here. Um, Let me get back to this COVID for a minute, because when
Hmm.
when it started in the spring, we kind of like, well, we've been running this course called How to Design an Online Course. It's something that is like an online course about building an online course for teachers.
Mm.
We've been running that for, I think, 4 or 5 years in Tampere. It was originally aimed at like our teachers, so kind of like teacher training, helping people to transform their existing courses into online courses.
Mhm.
Um, and we have also sort of like trying to market that course to like outsiders as well. So it's been part of like education export that we've been doing.
Mm.
And oftentimes some of the participants have been our own teachers, and then there have been some like paying customers as well. So, you know, a mixture basically.
Nice.
But now when we had this COVID pandemic, we got like really urgent requests from our university that, you know, there are a lot of groups, a lot of teachers who have to start their uh, new new programs like in this autumn. They have to start it online because international students, they can't come to Finland because of the circumstances, and especially these like international degree programs that are starting. So
Mhm.
they are in a hurry that they need to transform all of their teaching into online, and they haven't done that before. So we were kind of like busy with giving them like a really condensed version of that course, which we did this August. Actually, it was 5 weeks,
Mm.
and before it was 10 weeks, so it's been like a longer entity. But if we think about, you know, for example, that course, like where did we start from, is usually that you need to sort of like look at um, some learning design models. Maybe I think they are usually really helpful.
Mhm.
So if you follow one of the learning design models, you will usually get a pretty good framework for your process of designing the online course. Because if you just start like, okay, let's start from the first lesson that I'm going to have online, and then just go proceed gradually, the chances are that you might forget to look at your course from one perspective or another, and then something might be missing out, something is not as clear for the
Mm.
students as for you maybe. So what these models do, they they usually offer you a framework that helps you take into account like all the possible things that you should take into account when you plan a course in an online setting, because it is sometimes sometimes it might be really different from
Bit,
a classroom course. Some
yeah.
principles are of course the same, but there are a lot of stuff, a lot of things that are different.
And it can be a bit daunting as well. Like if you're
Yeah,
just trying
yeah,
to, and you get, you know, you do lesson one, you do lesson two, and then you're like, oh, I'm sure everyone experienced that during COVID, just trying to survive sort of lesson by lesson and putting
yeah,
it
yeah,
online.
exactly. But I think, you know, the good thing is that these frameworks that you find, these models, they are not rocket science. So they are basically really understandable. They make sense when you look at them, when you read through them. You're like, okay, this is really like, you know, makes sense.
Hmm.
But the beauty is that they kind of like force you to take a look at different sides of things, and then
Mm.
you don't forget anything crucial. But maybe I can just like briefly go through some of the ideas, some of the models that might be
Definitely.
useful for teachers. If somebody's watching this who's planning on designing an online course, you know, kind of like where to start from. You might find something that you can pick up and maybe explore a bit on your own.
Mm,
So
nice.
I try to share my screen. Let's see if
Hmm.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is first of all, this is something that we did like last spring. We were kind of like having this group of people who were interested in turning their courses into an online course, and we asked them, okay, what comes to mind if you when you hear the word hear the term online teaching, and we got these results. So it's kind of like it's fun to read. I mean, most of these things are like okay, fact oriented stuff like, you know, self-directness, flexibility, interaction, opportunity, all of these things. But then of course these attitudinal words as well, like, you know, boring,
Mm.
complicated, crap.
Again.
So but that's kind of like what was expected, because people have different ideas, people have different experiences, and that's kind of like that's where we start
Oh, there's
from.
crap in the middle there, yeah.
There is, yeah. But if I just go here,
Just to touch
this
on
is
one other word I noticed in there that we were talking quite a lot about during the COVID was right on the far left, it says dropouts. We
dropout.
noticed a few dropouts from the COVID experience, which I know is, I just wanted to reiterate a point that I had made previously, that the COVID experience of online teaching is not, well designed for 100% online teaching, which is, yeah, what we wanted to talk about more in this interview. Yeah, designing a course specifically for online.
Yeah. Yeah, and usually, what COVID did was that we kind of like we get a lot of these emergency online courses, kind of like that. They've been put together really quickly, maybe not focusing that much on the pedagogy side because of the time pressure,
Mm.
But when and hopefully when you do your online course from scratch, so that you have time, you have energy to look at how it should be done so that it actually works and it's for example reduces dropouts, so then these models can be really helpful. So let's have a look at a couple. I have here on this slideshow a couple of models. The first one being this ADDIE model, which basically consists of these 5 stages. First one being analyze, kind of like looking at the okay, what are the goals of my course? What do I want my students to learn?
Mm.
What kind of students I have, and what kind of technology can I use with them, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next step would be designing, taking a look at the objectives, like, okay, what are the specific objectives that I can derive from my goals? Like, okay, I want them to learn this and that, and then this and that. And then thinking about different strategies, like how to reach those objectives. Then after that, you start developing the learning resources, so the tasks, the activities, uh, trying to make them as good as possible, maybe running some pilots, yeah, using feedback from colleagues.
Mm.
Uh, then after that, implementing, trying to trying that in practice, like running the course, having your students there, basically doing it in practice, and afterwards evaluating, which of course also happens during the course. So as I said in the beginning, no rocket science here, basically really sensible process of creating any kind of course. I mean, this would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
really something that you do with any courses. Then this backward design is something that is kind of useful to keep in mind. Really simple model, basically just tells you to start from the end. You first look at the results that you want to achieve with the course. Okay, I
Mm.
want my students to be able to understand this concept, or to do this in their line of work, for example. Then you go back and determine sort of like, okay, how can I make sure that they have reached these results? So what's the evidence, so to speak?
Mm.
How can I assess that? And then you start planning the tasks and the learning experiences.
This is backwards
This,
design is one of my favorites. I think it also it's borrowing heavily from design, as that reference says, understanding by design. It
yes,
borrows heavily from design, and it's big in the computing world, computer programming world.
yeah,
So yeah, it just kind of comes naturally when thinking about things like what's your outcome in the end? What do you actually want
yeah,
them to be able to do?
yeah. And this is something that if you think about a lot of teachers that start like building their first online course, maybe the biggest errors, biggest like um, things that you can do wrong basically is that you start from the nice apps that you found, that okay, hey, I found that there's this Quizlet that I can use, and what should I do with this? And then you just basically start from that. You start building things around that, and then, oh, there's also this other app that I want to use, and then you start from that and start creating stuff And then usually that doesn't lead to very good results because you kind of like start from the wrong end. And I can understand that because there's really like temptation for doing that because they might seem really fun, and you know, this I can make my students like really amazed when I do these tips and tricks with these things here. But then we just need to remember to focus on the results, and you know how to get there, and really think about the whole process like from the end.
Mm.
And this is something that I personally um, felt to be really good. I've run some workshops also based on this, and in the course that I just mentioned, how to design an online course, we kind of like we have taken some elements from this model and then like combined it with some other stuff, and you know, built a lot of work on it. So how this goes basically is that when you start designing your online course, the first stage would be writing this blueprint. And what blueprint means here is that it's like a really rough plan, like a very general kind of vision of, you know, what kind of course you would like to create. What's the big picture? What's the, like, you know, with one sentence, what's the learning outcome? And you know, how would you like your course to be like? Is it like dynamic or like really professional looking, or what's the look and feel kind of like? It has these certain parts that you need to include. Then stage two would be storyboarding, and storyboarding is something that I've also found to be extremely useful. It's kind of like visualizing your course idea. I will show you an example of this in a minute. Visualizing your course idea with these different sections. You can actually do this like non-digitally as well, like using these like these what are they called? Like these post. What are they called? I'm just having a blackout. These
A
like tiny,
storyboarding.
tiny pieces of paper, you know, different colors. Post-it,
Ah.
post-it, yeah,
Oh,
post-it
post-it notes.
stickers,
Yeah,
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 yeah, post-it notes.
yeah.
So using them and whiteboards, for example, you can just like
Ah, definitely.
usually in a
Or just
manual.
a big blank wall or something. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it works that way as well. So we've run like workshops where people have you know got together and storyboarded like in the classroom, but it can of course also be done digitally. Then after that, you start building a prototype. So you kind of like take your storyboard, take your blueprint, try to create a rough framework for your course, like how it could look like using a lot of placeholders, like, okay, a task here, instructions here, a video here, and then later on you start like producing the content. But you kind of like build a framework and maybe
Mm.
some example tasks already. And then in stage four, you get feedback. You get
I like
feedback
that. Check
from,
reality. That's a good name for
yeah,
it.
check reality. So you get feedback from peers, from your mentor maybe. Um, they can give you some further ideas on how to improve your design. And in stage five, you kind of look back to your original objectives and storyboards and all of that, and see if you stick to the plan, maybe make some adjustments, and then finally you kind of like you create an action plan on how to finalize your course, how to make it ready. So that's how it works, and I think that's really effective. If we look at this storyboard example next, so this is how it could look like. So in this example, you have the weeks there in the top row, and then you have different topics for each week, and then there's this 5-stage model, which I'm also going to show you next. I'm
Okay.
noticing that I have this like nice structure that I always show something that I promise to show next, and it kind of like goes on and on. Sorry. But then, you know, just you put different tasks there for different topics. You mark yourself that, okay, this is something that I'm going to assess. You can also use different colors for like tasks that are to be done in groups or individually. So you know you're basically, you can decide how to use this, how to utilize the different colors, so that you can see the whole entity of your course. Maybe find out that, okay, it seems that I have a lot of tasks at the start, but not so many at the end. So maybe I should do something fix the balance, or maybe I have too much like individual work. Maybe there's should be more like group work at some point, or that I only give feedback on this one task. Maybe there should be more feedback. Maybe I use peer feedback for some of the tasks. These kind of things, and this really helps with that. You can see at a glance that okay, this is my design. There might be something lacking. There might be something too much. I need to take away something. So getting this overall view.
I like this point 3, and I don't think many of us concentrate on this with in the blue there. So you can see number 1, access and motivation, number 2, online socialization, etc., etc. I think that's very important, especially for, I mean, it's important for in-class as well, but especially for online, that point number 1, and it taking up, a whole couple of weeks there, and even like online socialization, because we don't have that face-to-face, and we don't have, access to face-to-face education is just a given. It's very easy. You're in the same physical space. It's easy access, but access to online and the motivation to actually come back to the course week after week, it's something that needs to be concentrated on in an online course and built up in the students.
Definitely.
That's a really good one.
This is a picture of the model, the 5-stage model, and as you said, I think the first 2 steps are actually, I think, the most important ones in this model, that you really need to focus on how to make sure that everybody can access all the resources that you have, all the tools, all the environments, how to make them motivated, how to keep up the motivation, how to make sure that they will like socialize into the environment and also with each other, so that they kind of like become committed to the course. I think that's really critical, also in terms of like reducing the dropouts, because most of the dropouts usually happen right at the beginning. So if you can avoid that, then that would be splendid. So what I all the time, what I tell people to do, I tell them that they should hopefully include a lot of collaboration already from the start, that the students would actually interact with each other. Maybe they have small groups that they can start working with, which kind of like it makes them give and receive peer support. They can also like get the idea that I'm not alone here in this like cyber space.
Definitely. Yeah.
They need to see that there are other
Sitting
people
in my
there.
little office
The
or something.
teacher also, the teacher has to be really visible in the first weeks, that preferably with your face and your voice, to make it personal, that there's not just a name and then some text that okay, there's somebody supposedly somewhere there, but I don't see him or her, I don't hear anything, so I don't know if somebody's actually reading my text, and all that. So it pays off to be really active at the beginning. If you go and read people's students' texts, then just like leave a small comment, even if it's not that like grandiose or like thought out, but just to let them know that somebody is there, somebody is reading the stuff, somebody's giving feedback. And if you can like post an introductory video of yourself where you explain things, if you have a video meeting with the students, that helps usually a lot. So focusing on this, like building this sense of community at the beginning, I think that's really important. And talking about differences in classroom teaching and online teaching, especially from the viewpoint of languages and communication, I think that this kind of like enabling communication is something that really differs, because in a classroom setting you can just tell your students that hey, just turn your chairs a bit and start talking. You don't really need to enable anything, because they are there, they can just start talking. But in an online context, you really need to think about how that is done. How many people would talk with each other, where do they talk, what kind of tools they use, will they be able to access it, what about the scheduling, all that. So it takes more time and energy to plan it. and
Mm-hmm.
you really need to plan it to make it successful.
Mm.
And that brings us maybe to the kind of like the division of tasks that you have in online teaching. You can divide them in many ways, but one of the ways to divide tasks
Mm-hmm.
is this, like that you have these synchronous tasks that the students are doing at the same time, video lectures, for example, um, well, any kind of like lectures basically. And then you have asynchronous tasks, which give the students more flexibility in terms of time and space where they will be doing their tasks. So it
Mm.
means that they can do the tasks at different times. But again, from the language and communication perspective, for example, these kind of like video discussion forums, like Flipgrid would be one of the tools that does this. Basically, is that you can have a discussion forum where you use video instead of text. um, and that's kind of like really handy. You can still have
Mm.
video, you can still have audio, people actually talking using their uh, language skills, and still have it so that people don't have to be there at the same time. They can just like keep the discussion going, posting new replies to videos whenever they have time to do that. So
Mm.
yeah, these are things that you need to think about when you design online courses. What kind of activities do I put there, and try to make sure that you have a nice variety of different tools. You have both synchronous, asynchronous activities. um, you have stuff that students can do together, also maybe individually. These different dimensions of tasks and how to build them. I think
One of
that's
the
important.
questions that we've had, well, one of the comments that we've had, I think, over this COVID experience is everything. I mean, a lot of people were in an emergency situation, of course. So a lot of this discussion, classroom sort of discussion, was asynchronous, occasionally using Zoom. But if we just talk about the asynchronous and managing that discussion, um, it does take a little bit of management. And I was wondering if you have any tips, because the comments were that, I have 256 different conversations going across my courses and I can't comment and feedback on all of them. What do I do? I'm going crazy and I'm spending from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., just replying to forum posts. What do I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, that's a really relevant question, and this one of the dimensions of this online teaching is that you and what one of the things that you hear quite a bit is that people seem to get exhausted. Teachers might get exhausted with the number of things that they should comment on, that they should read about, and it will very easily become exhausting. And I think that it all goes back to designing these online courses. So when you design the courses, of course you should focus on like how many hours of student work this course takes. So is it like I'm planning a 5 credit course, so does the workload equal 5 credits? How
Mm-hmm.
much do they actually need to do for this course? That's something that we usually kind of like automatically think about because we're building our courses for the students, kind of like. But then in this online context, which is kind of like, it is still a new area for many teachers, it might be much more difficult to assess how many working hours this will take from the teacher. And
Mm.
one of the dangers is usually that you end up having far too many tasks where you kind of like plan to be involved yourself, and then you all of a sudden you find that you have just too many things that you should give feedback about, or make comments, or keep track. So I would just say that when you plan the courses, make sure that you look at the course designs also from this perspective, that you kind of like carefully take a look at, okay, these are the tasks where I will provide feedback. And then for other tasks, it might be that it's enough if I just can see that it's done. I don't have to like provide further feedback. Or then you might actually implement some kind of a peer feedback system. Of course, that's something that usually helps a lot, especially if you have a lot of students. Then like making small groups, and then the groups can give feedback to each other, and these kind of systems, they
Mm.
are of course handy. But yeah, that's a really relevant point, and I mean there are different ideas on how to do that effectively. But the fact is, if you have a lot of conversations and you would need to sort of like react to a lot of them, keep track of on a number of them, it is exhausting actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And you might end up just like spending days and days reading through everything, and still feeling that I can't do enough.
Mm. Which I guess,
And
also comes back to that time management as well. Course design, of course, is number one importance, but yeah, just managing your time, I guess, like you can't, although it's really interesting, you can't actually talk on all of the forum postings, and yeah, just sort of browse them, I guess, in some, like you said, like, was the activity done? Yes, no.
yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, giving feedback is also interesting, because I think that it's, if you ask from students what's the best thing that the teacher can give you, usually they say that giving this like informed feedback, really like a view of an expert, and that's something that they really value. And if you think about how to give feedback in an online course, usually people think about like, okay, I write a couple of sentences, and that's the feedback that I'm going to give. But then again, there are also different ways, and I might mention as an example this course that we've actually run with Belinda.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had this English speaking and listening that we've done a couple of times with different partners, and Belinda is one of them. So in that course, we focus on speaking and listening, and of course, because of the focus, we also thought that it might be fun to give the feedback in audio form. So
Mm.
the students, they kind of like a lot of the tasks that they submit, they kind of like they record audio or they record videos, and then we give feedback in audio form, and it takes time. So that's something that we've also experienced in the course, that actually when you give written feedback, it's really quick, because you can just like, you have the basic structure already somewhere there, and then you just like tweak it a bit, you add stuff here and there. It's much quicker to sort of like provide this written feedback. But then for audio feedback, even if you're like aiming at, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes audio file, which is not that long, you still have to record that every time from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
for every individual. But the other point here is that the students really liked it. They really felt that it's really like personal kind of way to receive feedback, that the teacher is actually talking only to you. It's individual feedback just for you, and they really appreciated it. But just an idea for an alternative way of giving feedback in an online context. So that's something that can also be used.
I actually found it not quite the opposite, but written feedback for me takes time. I have to sit there and type it out or something. I don't often have templates, or like the template is
Yeah,
just not good enough. So I sort of give up a bit on templates and just like
yeah,
write it individual anyway, which takes time, typing speed and
yeah,
slows you down. But recording the audio was actually kind of just like sitting down, the students in front of me, like a little private consultation. And I've like listened to or read all of their stuff and formulate something to say in my head and press the record button and go blah, 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 done.
yeah.
And like send out the link. And yeah, I found it actually really quite quick
That's
and
interesting. So it
easy.
might be
Yeah.
also a matter of like personal preference, or like how you actually usually work. Maybe, I don't know. It's, yeah, interesting to hear that you actually felt it to be the opposite.
Yeah, yeah. I do find it an interesting way to give feedback, and it's great to hear that students like hearing, an actual personalized, but also voice. So there's a human there, somebody talking to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. What else should we keep in? Oh, here's a question. What do you think would be, if I'm, especially if I'm just beginning, but what do you think is the biggest tip that you have? Like, what's the most important thing to focus on if we're trying to take a physical course face to face
Mm.
and putting it online? What should we keep in mind?
Hmm. I've sometimes been asked the same question, like what are the key things, like a couple of key areas that I should like focus on. And of course, it depends on the situation, on the course as well. Like, okay, what kind of course do you have at hand? But if for most courses, I would probably say that one of the things that you need to sort of like focus on would be, well, collaboration would be something that I would always mention. I think that creating collaboration in an online course is really crucial, um,
Mm,
because it kind of like it gives you so much benefits. It usually it reduces dropout rates. It makes
mm,
the whole learning experience more like to feel better for the students. They feel that they can share things. They can actually like construct knowledge together with other students. They're not like working alone and producing the information only for the teacher. So collaboration, which is something that usually, if we think about the classroom course, usually it's kind of like people take that into account already. But in an online context, it requires effort to create collaboration. So that's sometimes one of the reasons why it gets forgotten, maybe, at least part.
mm,
So focusing on collaboration, enabling that, creating frameworks on how it's done. And then the second area would be the clarity of instructions, to make everything as clear as possible, to plan the course layout so that it's easy to follow, so that students don't get lost. They kind of like
mhm,
it proceeds logically. They know what to do. They feel that they can like they just don't get lost. That's also one of the things that makes them more motivated, makes them um, continue with the course. I can maybe show you something that we have. This is actually the online course that we've been running. I'm just going to
oh,
show you an
nice.
example of a task framework. So usually we've told our students that these teachers that are taking the course that you should have a framework for tasks. And what we've used here is that we have this first instructions, which basically tells you what to do, where to do it. Then there's objectives, which kind of like gives information on, okay, what am I learning when I do this task? What's the purpose of this task?
Mm,
Then notes, if you want to add some
mm,
additional information here. And time needed, this is actually very handy, because when the students start doing the task, it is really useful if they know how much time this task will take up. Because sometimes they
mm,
only have like half an hour. They start doing the task, then they find out at some point that, okay, I don't have enough time to do this till the end, and then it might get interrupted, and it's difficult to continue that later on. So when they know this, they kind of like they can budget the time, and they can plan it so that they can do it like when they have enough time for it.
mm,
So that's important as well. And of course, the deadline. And the idea here is that the whole framework gets repeated. Like all the tasks, they have the same subheadings like instructions, objectives, notes, time needed, deadline. So this is just one example, but kind of like creating this framework for yourself, that you have all the necessary bits of information in for each task, so that they know what to do, when to do, how to do every time they're doing it, basically.
and it
So
becomes, yeah,
that's
I like that. And it becomes a nice, easy framework that, every task you just fill in the headings and yeah, it's
yeah.
nice and easy to create.
So I would probably go with like collaboration and then clarity. I think these are really important things, and maybe the third thing being that really focus on how you start the course. Like the first week is really crucial. and you know, making it feel that, you know, it's a nice experience for the students. They feel that they can actually um, start studying without having to worry about, like, you know, can I find everything that I need? Am I the only one in the course? You know, what am I supposed to do? Is there a teacher somewhere? You know, these kind of questions, that there's active teacher presence in the course right from the start. Also probably before the start already, that you kind of like start messaging the students that, okay, this is, we're going to start the course next week, and this is what you need to do to get to the environment, and so on. So usually that's what I do, at least, that I try to get sort of like all the instructions there already before the start, so that when it starts, they kind of like have had the opportunity to take a look at the course, and you know, the environment, and maybe read some of the instructions already, and have some questions if they.
Nice. And yeah, sometimes on our collaborative course, the first teacher will have like a meeting, a Zoom meeting, just sort of like an open coffee room, virtual coffee room, where you just, you know, students can drop in and say hi and see that there's an actual physical person behind this course. And yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what we also did here. Like this pop-in video call on the first day, that you can just come there, you can say hi, you can ask questions if you have any, you can test your equipment if you like. Just like really this free form, laid back virtual coffee room, as you put it. I think that's a really nice practice, that you can start off with something like that. So you provide an opportunity for everybody to come in and say hi, and you know, it's nice.
Mm, nice. Okay, so collaboration, clarity, and there was a third.
Yeah, I don't know how to put
And
that
is
in
it a
one word,
C?
but it's like, you
Then
know,
we could
there's
have
a
the three C's.
yeah, the third C, yeah. That be like, you know, well, you know, basically just focusing on the first week. I don't know if you can
The
put
first
C
week.
somewhere.
Yeah, okay. Can we put that into a C? The
Yeah.
socialization, maybe it's a more like an S. It's kind of,
Yeah.
it's a little bit socialization, but a little bit of some of those other points that we had, like access to the course
Yes.
and um, motivation, yeah, to study.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so what did we say? Collaboration, clarity, and yeah, that focus on that first week.
Yes, I would think those are like really important areas to keep in mind, and if you just focus on those, I think that you will be off to a good start, at least.
Nice. Okay, as a final kind of wrap up, uh, have you any, you know, what are the major like successes or the things that you've learned over time, like the mistakes that you've made, and any things that you've learned over time? What
Mm.
about that for, yeah, online courses?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably write a book about them.
It's true.
It's one thing that I always tell when people are like, when I'm telling people about like these online pedagogical things, like talking about how to build an online course or something like that, I usually show them a picture of this crazy chemist that, you know, has his hair like blown up, and, you know, doing some crazy experiments, and you know, ending up getting blown up. So that's basically what online teaching often feels like, that you just have to like have the courage to experiment, try to try to do new things. Sometimes it doesn't really work, so you end up like failing really badly. Sometimes it does, so then you might find something really interesting, and okay, hey, this works really well, I will do that again sometime in the future. And it's a lot of the work is like that, and that's basically, that's also one of the things why we have this digimentor network at our universities. Kind of like, this is one of our tasks, that we actually do this for the other teachers as well. We kind of like experiment a lot, so that everybody doesn't have to go through all the same experiments, so we can
That's
then
true.
just share with them that, okay, these are the things that we found that are really working, and these are the things that didn't work, you know.
Mm,
But still, it's like it's always this like trial and error experiment, because I think that's online teaching is still a bit like wild west, that there are like a lot of stuff there and it changes all the time, no clear laws or like rules how to do things. So it kind of like it takes time to first of all find out like what are the options. For example, I want to set up an online course somewhere, like what are the platforms that I can use. Then you start googling, you'll find like hundreds of different options, like
Mm.
okay, how do I know what to choose? And then I want to create this kind of activity. I have like loads of different tools that I can choose from, so it takes time to kind of like sift through the alternatives and try to find really working ones. But I think that, you know, from the course design perspective, I think that one of the things that I've learned along the way, when I started with my first online courses, I think that I probably did what teachers very often do, that they kind of like they put all their materials online. They just like think about the online environment as like a container for material. You kind of
Just throw everything
it's
there.
just everything out there, and then you're like, okay, there you go,
It's
students,
out
you have
there.
stuff,
They can
have
learn.
fun. Exactly. So it's something that you know really well illustrates like how terribly wrong you can actually build online courses. It doesn't it's not an online course, it's just like a place for stuff,
It's
and
resources.
then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, for resources. So so that's something that I found out that, you know, it's really, it doesn't work. They don't even open up the materials if you have like too much stuff there. And
Mm.
that's what I usually had at the beginning, like many of the times I had a lot of material, I just couldn't decide what are the most important bits, and then the clarity suffered a lot. Like it was like a mess basically, they couldn't
And
find.
that collaboration, like if you've just got
Yeah,
materials, there's
yeah, exactly.
zero collaboration.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that's I think that these like the tips that I mentioned, like the, you know, clarity, collaboration, they also come from my own experience, that if I don't, you know, work on them, then it'll not be a good online course basically. So that's what I've found. Of course, you know, having said that, I know that there are different different kind of online courses. Sometimes you might have really good grounds of having like this sort of like, if you need to, for example, accomplish this um, let's say like fire safety course, you need to, there are different regulations about fire safety and you need to like show that you know them. Then it might be that it's enough that you have this kind of like information basis, you have some questions, you just click the right answers, then there's at the end there's an exam, and then you pass it, then you get the fire safety certificate or whatever. So you
Mm.
don't necessarily need to have collaboration in that kind of course, that you want to think about fire safety with your friends there. Or it might be enough just to build it so that it can be done at different times, it can be done individually at your own pace whenever you have time. So it might be really good for that purpose. So
Mm.
so online teaching is like, you know, like classroom teaching, it's never like one size fits all. So
True.
it's very case to case basis. But you know, most of the courses, especially,
Especially
you know,
language
dealing with
courses.
languages, yeah, usually you need to have collaboration, you need to have communication. So that's the key.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Well, thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it looks like a beautiful sunny day in Finland there.
It is a sunny day today. Yesterday we had a bit of a storm. A lot of the trees fell down actually.
Oh
So
no.
it's yeah, really. I don't remember having that bad storm like in a year's time or so. So it was like really windy, and
Mm,
no, it's all right.
nice. So I hope you have a lovely day in the sun there, maybe picking up trees.
Yeah,
Good
chopping some
fire, good,
firewood.
yeah, good firewood for the winter.
Yeah, I better do that.
Nice. Yes, thank you very much for your time. And it was extremely informative. And yeah, it'll be wonderful to put this Wow, together.
Together.
that was packed with information. There are some screenshots and some links and things down below in the article, so be sure to check that out. And if you have any requests perhaps questions for Henri or requests for interviews for other people that you know are doing some cool language teaching using technology. And if you have any requests for other topics or other topics of ways to use technology while we're teaching and learning methods for language teaching in particular, send me an email. So any requests, send me an email or comment below, and we'll see what we can do with that. Next up, next interview, we're going to interview Eva from economics, and she's going to talk a great deal, again packed with information, about advanced interactive syllabus in the IS, advanced interactive syllabus skills for putting all sorts of things and staying within the interactive syllabus rather than going out to external or even internal IS things. And also advanced robot skills. These robot skills are out of sight, so do come and check that video out, coming very, very soon. Catch you next time.